We're live. You're on right.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you all very much for being here. But first, before we all get started, I just want to thank all the staff of Everfree Northwest and all for just giving me this opportunity to speak in each and every one of you. And I'm just thrilled beyond the words to describe. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Shawnee Peck by profession, but my channel name is The Dark Horse of KC. Now, here's a little bit of a brief description about me. So what I am, I'm a professional wrangler by trade, which means I actually am a wrangler, but I could go on of what happened there, but I would be here for days. I've been diagnosed since I was 4 years old with autism. I've been a brony since the end of season 2, and pretty much what you see down here is all the accomplishments that I will say that one of the questions people asked about me is if I would see the people who diagnosed me when I was 4 years old that I would have autism, that I would never be able to speak, never be able to be an individual, or even be able to talk in general. What would I say to them? I would say, look at these accomplishments, and I want to say, thank you for giving my parents the drive to prove you all wrong. So, yeah, pretty much, you never would have suspected that someone with autism can go all over the country to be a wrangler, to be a part of the equestrian trail sporting, which that would be up for a Q&A session later, and to be a board member of a new association for the Country Tough Variation. And, of course, people wonder how I managed to keep an account or keep everything insane with my autism. Well, hence why these little guys, which business cards up there, seem to double my thinking power. And you all don't have an idea. Note to Rocky Harmony, plus she joke didn't work. So, yeah, Rocky Harmony, if you go on my channel, Dark Horse of KC, he's my partner in crime in my review. So, I bet you're all asking the one question, why the title Dark Horse? Well, this is dictionary.com's definition of a dark horse. A dark horse is really a horse member term or a candidate or competitor about whom little is known but is unexpectedly wins or succeeds. A dark horse candidate. Well, I believe that people of the autism spectrum, Asperger's, or any form of a disability, which I call them mind challenges, has the ability to be able to present themselves. Now, before we get into the subject of MLP, I want to ask you all one simple mind question. This is a question that I want you to think of the first thing I present to you, and that is stick horse. Now, be honest with me. How many of you all think are either these? Go on, be honest. Probably a lot of artists would cringe at the stick horse idea. But if you think about it, that's what people think when they think of the autistic person, thinking it's a strange, simple, childish, yet won't be able to do anything when you hear that word. But if you think of a different perspective, if you go beyond the stereotype or what the doubts people have, you could go from thinking to that. But in my mind, I think about this creation. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, nice.
Now, I bet you all are wondering, what is a bunch of sticks formed in a horse doing in the middle of an art exhibit?
Because it's art.
It is art.
It's expression of self through art.
Exactly. Which, that's funny enough that you mentioned that because this relates to anything, but I will give you a little history about this. Now, how many of you all are actually from Hawaii or know the Hawaiian culture? No one? Well, this is Mononeka, which in translation means Montana in Hawaiian. This was made by Deborah Butterfield, who was a Baldwin, Montana resident, and it's amazing because here's of course it's a Hawaiian name, and according to the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Butterfield considered the animal's expressive postures in response to the natural world as metaphors for human experience. Now this intrigued me the most when I first read that this stick figure that looks so vulnerable that I bet you munchkins would be roaming all over the place, probably knock it down. What people don't understand is that Butterfield, she had done this for over 30 years. That's all actually bronze. She took all the stick figures, individually formed them, bronzed them together, and pieced them together to be in the middle of all this. So what looks vulnerable is actually pretty strong. That's what I see what people should rethink of the autistic perspective, especially in the subject matter of the people of autism and the spectrum loving My Little Pony. Well, I know what you're thinking. Why do people love ponies, but yet the rest of the world thinks we're crazy? Well, after talking to a few people, and especially with my boss, she's an amazing person, by the way. She allowed me to do this. Thanks, Sue, by the way. She's seen all this. There's this one particular thing she always said, because of the size, and I mean by the size is of the horse. So this question, why horses over ponies? Well, if you think about it, horses have been the symbol of many different interpretations. For some, it is a symbolism of conquering, of war, and some of bringing beauty and art involving, even with mystical terms. For some, it is some of the symbol of victory in wars and of races of kings. By the way, in the bottom there, that's justified. I'm hoping he would be the next Triple Crown winner bottom there. But in the matter of perspective, there's also the test of strength and ability from man to beast of top, from learning teamwork to learning how to stay on the saddle, even the grace and value of the horse, and even in entertainment, where you get to see television shows and movies and plays that pretty much show the beauty and wonder of the horse. So like I said before, horses are pretty much have been the backbone of society, showing us strength, power, and everything. And as my boss would often say, it is because the one thing that the pony has, the low center of gravity, which is true. So again, why horses over ponies? And the answer is, it is what I would like to call the conspiracy of size and reputation. Which, by the way, that's my digital form of my personal horse Double D. Which, by the way, that's pretty much the rest of my family wondering why I'm in the form of that. But what most people think in terms of ponies, they think of the mini Shetland ponies. And that's what they think of the autistic prospectus as well. They think they're out of control and not be able to do anything. Well, I would like to introduce you to someone who, with an associate of mine when I worked in Durango 3 years ago, or 4 years ago. This little guy on the right, this is Napoleon. He is an actual mountain pony. Now, he's right next to a Belgian Percheron, but you would think that compared to with a 5-foot person, every wrangler wanted to ride that pony because despite his size, he could be able to travel a great distance across the rocky Colorado ridges without horseshoes. He could jump over places, climb up high mountains at 8,000 degree altitude, and yet that size, that's a pony. And yet, that brings also to the other question, really, of the subject matter of the autistic perspective. What does it have to do with the ponies and the autistic perspective? Now, this I say twice, because people often say it twice in case if the one person doesn't hear. Now, I will say that I have been working with horses for almost 3 decades. And I will say that ponies or equines, sorry about that, excuse me there. Ponies and equines have autistic traits. Now, I bet you're all wondering, why? Well, here's what I've learned. It's all in the matter of trust. Horses are very trustworthy animals, and if you or a loved one has a trust problem, that makes sense. They also have sensitivity to surroundings and sounds, and they are aware of everything. They are under and overestimated abilities and intelligence. I've seen many horses that actually were underestimated, like a horse I called El Chapo. He was a Craigslist horse for $200 and pretty much was almost worthless. He turned out to be the best mountain trail and rescue horse, at least in my mother's minds, but they're diligent to prove them wrong. They can be considered unusual creature that should be broken into society. Now, that last sentence, I was a little confused on my own part. For when I say on broken into society, they think normal. Well, I can assure you from what I've learned, there is no such thing as normal.
Preach.
So, in another perspective, why do people love MLP so much again? Well, I would like to turn your attention to a famous man who's known for cigars and brandy a lot, and that would be Sir Winston Churchill here. He often said, there is something about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of a man. And isn't that true? Wasn't there something, though, about this show that managed to get us all? Or if you're ever on a trail ride or you see a movie involving horses like War Horse or Black Beauty. And yet, it's amazing, though, that we can be okay crying over Black Beauty, but yet we get looked down for crying over some episode that really touches to the core about pastel-colored horses. Which brings to the subject matter that I would also like to discuss about. Now, understand, while I was in the graphic design department in college, I had a thesis going on when I was introduced to the show in color theory about the defending of color. Well, the one I chose is pastel, because if you think about it, this show is known to be all pastel. And I would give an argument with my other thesis about how it's compared to SpongeBob, but after hearing it made a great musical somehow, I'm not going to argue that. I still don't know why. So here's a generation one. Now, of course, this is all in the 80s, and you can see how it's all calm and peaceful and perspective. And as someone to a child, it can seem very warm and inviting. Well, I've learned as an autistic person that soft colors like these, despite the weirdness in there, it seemed very appealing. Doesn't that seem appealing, though, in the pastel? Compared to the predecessor following that, I know some of you are not going to like me for revealing the dreaded G3.
Where's my eyes?
So, think about it. Compared to the pastel colors, it seemed more inviting, but yet with high saturation, to a person with autism's mind, that was like way too much color. And it would seem to crowd the mind so much. It even wondered why I managed to come up with it. Now, on the right, I'm getting to there. The right, it seemed a little more appealing, didn't it? It was less saturated, but it was starting to slowly get back into the pastel colored realm. Now let's get you to something a little more comfortable. So, in comparison to G3, it went back to the roots of G1, where it just had pastel colors, but yet a little more bright, and it would be more useful for Flash. And some people were, surprisingly enough, I will say that this I learned recently, because my brother is actually going to be a dad in September, and I've been shopping baby stuff for my little niece, Charlie. And I've learned that there were so many pastel colors compared to the toddler section, which had saturation, yet babies had pastel. Pastel can be a beautiful and inviting way to develop more character in there. Now, some people would think it's a waste, but even the famous artist Claude Monet said, "People discuss my art and pretend it's understand as if it were necessary to understand when it's simply necessary to love." That's the best quote I could give about this show for the bronies. And this is coming from the guy who said that pretty much I just waste a lot of paint and nothing ever comes out. Well, if he were alive today, how many of us would disagree how many paints he wasted pretty much doing all the water lilies collection of all pastel colored oil paints? And doing oil in that pastel colored tone, if you could see it's more inviting, pretty much helps calm the mind and inspires more. Now, there's another part of this show which, seeing Monet's work, it pretty much was his escapism, which I believe for the show, for a lot of people with the perspective, is a great form of escape. For me, the show was a wonderful opportunity, especially back in 2014 and 15, when I had a rough time in my life when I was a wrangler. Going to that show every Saturday on my short 30-minute break, it gave me something to look to, as well as watching Assassin's Creed cutscenes. And yes, I analyze those as well. But seeing those, it makes a great escape. Now, I would like to have it explained further, but I would have an associate of mine explain it all, and whoops! Oh my goodness, that's Rocky Harmony helped me out with this. He believed that would be advertisement. But no, this is from the associate I would like to mention here. If you'll excuse me for a minute. Sorry, hold on, take your time, and here we go. Oh, and the audio's not working.
Working on it. Whoop.
Around the idea that you're immersed into otherworldly destinations. And that's clarified in different ways for different people based on different perspectives and what they've been exposed to. Additionally, when discussing why escapism perhaps exists, many of the reasons are valued amongst the majority. Escapism is influenced by the desire for further understanding and the sharing of creativity, whether intellectually or fantastically. It therefore develops individuality, whether through keen interest developed throughout one's life or developed through the making of such art. The art developed continues world building and storytelling. It offers new perspectives, opinions, values, customs, and ideals to transcend to a mainstream point of view. That's especially valid when accounting for the multitude of people applying this through social media or through secret diaries.
Yeah, now, the gal that was featured there, that's actually a new YouTuber named Carson Geek. She's actually 4-stage autistic, like me, but yet she is also a filmmaker and everything. And my words were exactly to what she said about escapism. And that's why a lot of people like AJ, the Autistic Pony, and so many others with the autistic perspective wanted to show their escapism, to be able to express creativity. Which leads on to the next question. What inspires us can inspire others? Well, I will give you guys a very interesting story of another horse art sculpture which people think is crazy. If you think MLP was crazy, here's this story. Now, Leonardo da Vinci, we all know him, the first original deviant artist before DeviantArt came into being. Now,
And he didn't do shipping.
no, but he was actually commissioned to do this giant 3-story horse sculpture that was commissioned by the Duke of Milan, the Dolfi Meloro.
The first story.
Yeah, whatever he was. He was commissioned to do this giant sculpture. But then, due to the Borgia Wars and all the politics and everything going forward, he had the giant clay sculpture done that was actually 3 stories. It all got destroyed. And it was so expensive he couldn't do it again, and he died before he could even try again. That's not the end of the story. No, a certain amateur artist named Charles C. Dent found the original drawing sketch files of Leonardo's work, actually drew the sculpture's hand length right behind his barn, and decided to do it. But it was just when the sculpture was getting ready to bronze and finalize, he died of unnatural causes on Christmas of 1994.
Cursed.
However, this is the final good part of the story. It wasn't until a professional animal sculptor named Nina Akamu, who she finally took the reins and she knew what she was doing, got the cast going, got the bronze, and actually did many versions of this horse, but took the original horse to the original location in Italy, and that puppy, that's standing strong today. Yeah. 400 years. Now, if any of you artists think that's a late commission, that's what I call a fashionably late commission.
But it looks
So-
good.
This is a prime example. I see this as an example of parents working so hard to build up, even if it takes little by little stage. And that's how I see it in Leonardo's work. Now, the sad part though is we know all of Leonardo and we barely know of his work. But yet, here's the one thing I wanted you to ask, or for me to ask you all. Do any of you recognize any of these men?
I think I recognize the second guy.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you, they both had autism. They both were considered bat crazy beyond their minds and thought they would never do anything. Well, they managed to get their work published, and it wasn't until almost 200 years later you may recognize them by two beautiful masterpieces. That was Hans Christian Andersen and Lewis Carroll. Both of them had autism. And yes, they were both thought to be crazy because of their autism. And you want to know why? Because they were being lectured for being creative. Now, Albert Einstein begged to differ, for he said, creativity is intelligence having fun. So, in the perspective again of My Little Pony, you can be creative and it shows you can be intelligent if you show the right perspective. Now, you can have the same pony style and yet be adapted to the things that you love, like Assassin's Creed for me, as you see here, or else you could change the style completely different from the show and yet keep the integrity of the original games, like you see here. My friend is a big Dragon Age fan. Yeah, there are no cutie marks, but yet they kept the integrity of both the show and Dragon Age. And let us not forget the two most awesome dark novels, Cleve and Fallout Equestria. Who knew that a show about pastel-colored ponies would turn out to be of the two most dark novels ever done? By the way, in Cleve, if you look at the Autistic Ponies YouTube page, I actually play Candy Hearts on there. And if you want a little bit of a Criminal Minds actor in there, it's pretty dark. And not to mention, even games, with the release of them fighting herds and Pony Finder. Who knew that both of those were inspired by a show made for little girls and of pastel-colored ponies? And let us not forget the prime example of beautiful animations in both live action and of artistry. And I will pause to the side. I would like to talk a little bit about Snowdrop. How many of you all know of Snowdrop? Now, when I first saw Snowdrop here, I literally adapted to her quickly. Of course, I'm not blind or anything, but I could adapt to her about feeling helpless, like she couldn't do anything. How many of you, when you first saw that, thought it was exactly how you felt because of your autism, because of your Down syndrome, because of your Asperger's, because you're weird or undecided, as I would say. So, and yet, again, Snowdrop had the opportunity to prove them wrong. And I believe all of us, even in this community, we do have an opportunity to prove people wrong. And I'm sorry I lost the slide at the time, but actually at one point, my mother, oh, she's going to kill me. She's probably going to watch this live stream. She actually, she respects me now, but in the earlier years when I started watching the show, she did not like the idea of me watching MOP, but then over time, she saw what an impact it made, and when the little girl I nannied, Izzy, showed her this, she was really touched seeing how the fans take something about disability seriously and make it an empowering. I would like to see more of that in this fandom. So far what I've seen with all the drama that's going on since January and everything, I would like to see more Snowdrops, see more of My Little Dashie, where you have to take something, which My Little Dashie pretty much takes an environment where you're in a sorry state because of circumstances and adapt, and yet you have to let it go. And of course with Dinky Tales, that's just expressing your creativity, and I wish that Magpie Pony and Lost were there, they would have agreed to that. which leads on to, I think is the most important aspect, which I agree that the show best teaches. Sure, it's about friendship, but we also have to learn about fellowship. Now, what I mean about fellowship, you can be friends with someone, and that's Rocky Harmony, by the way, my partner in crime on my channel. We actually did a lot of collaborations, not just with My Little Pony, but with recent events that would go on. He actually, I can't remember what he asked, sorry Rocky if you're watching this, but we actually are both people with disabilities. Every time we would go to a movie, we would just sit in a car and talk about the movie later on, which normally you think, well, why not have a script or anything, but just have the title card and everything. I believe that we all have the ability to express, because in my mind, I hate being scripted and being told what to do, because that is saying from someone's words. Like, I will admit, even with this presentation, after working with 16 horses in the barn for 6 months recently, it gave me a lot of time to think about it. So having a script to a child, that would discourage them from becoming an individual. But over time, back to fellowship, but over time, if you extend your horizons, you can reach out to someone who, of course, Lightning Bliss does all of my vectors. She also gives out advice. If you just got to be sure to ask and just be a part of the conversation. Just because someone is well known doesn't mean oh, excuse me. Just because someone is well known doesn't mean you could carry on a conversation and have fellowship. And there are times where you go in a long collaboration that take over 2 years to do it, and yet it will get done eventually, and yet they have the patience of a saint. And yes, there will be a review, shenanigan review of Newbie Dash with Rocky, Tyandaga, and I. But yeah, but Tyandaga, he understood that Rocky and I, since we were so new, that he had the patience. I believe we all, extending to people with autism, we gotta have that patience and fellowship, and that'll encourage others to grow. And in time, you can lead on to success to other roles as well, including some, if you look on my video, that's when I discuss a lot about my Wrangler views on Wrangler. Now, to quote the famous champion of autism, Dr. Temple Grandin, who always wears that every time, and I would like to see Silver Quill wearing something like this. She often said, social thinking skills must be directly taught to children and adults to ASD. Doing so opens doors to social understanding in all areas of life, which I believe that's what we're all doing right now with this con. And it doesn't have to be with this con, but it can be anywhere. For me, I extend out to kids that go over to my boss's barn. I work with young kids in this private barn with barrel racing and pole bending. And extending out to them, it gives them an opportunity to be social and interactive. And right after when you get off, you get to talk to them. Just because you're clients doesn't mean you get to know their backstory a little bit and open up again to that fellowship. Now, some of you all, how many of you are parents with autistic children? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, over 6. Now this applies to both kids and on the adults. How many of you, be honest with me, struggle with trying to keep things going, or you have a goal you want to reach but you can't do it? Well, I want to say, first off, this was made possible by Passion Planner. I recommend Passion Planner. I will post a link on the website when I post my video, but it leads to having a plan. Now, I know that's not enough, I gotta have a game changer, but it wasn't until 3 years ago I remembered having a special book recommended to me called 212, The Extra Degree. Now, when I first saw this, I thought it was some weird cookbook or something like that. But to be fair, it was during the time right before I went to the dude ranch again. But no, it's more of a motivational book to help you keep going. And this is their most famous quote ever. At 211 degrees, water is hot. At 212 degrees, it boils. And with boiling water comes steam. And with steam, you can power a train. 1 degree, apply 1 extra degree to temperature to water means the difference between something that is simply very hot and something that generates enough to force to power a machine. So I believe in this fandom has given us all an opportunity to give 1 degree more than what we normally do. Now, I do Season 8 content on for the while, but I also do other contents like Assassin's Creed and Dragon Age, and I also do a podcast on random thoughts. But it gives me an extra motivation to where I can do just 1 regular with MLP reviews, but by adding 1 extra degree, it can open up more doors. And I could believe that can apply to anyone, like, say, going to school or making movies, music, art. As long as you put in 1 extra degree, and I will leave this up for y'all to see pictures and to look through the book later. But in the meantime, I know what you're all probably thinking. How can I tell someone who doesn't know of MLP that, how can someone like ponies? How can ponies change someone? Well, here's a story I would like to tell you. But first, can I ask if there's someone in the military or in the Marines here? Okay, only 1? Well, first, I want to give, if you know the story, all I ask is, no spoilers. This was for, in case if I had any Marines or if Josh Scorcher were here since he is a Marine, I want to tell you a little story about a special young lass from North Korea. Her name was Chin-hai, if I get that right. Now, she was born and raised in Korea to be a racer. She was pretty much going to the races to try to win all the money for her owner. But she was one day spotted out at the racetrack by the American Marines and was bought for $250 in American money from her master so he could replace his sister's leg that pretty much got blown out. So she was renamed Flame because An-Chim means flame. Then later, due to being nicknamed after the weapons that she carried on later after she was trained in the Marines. And in time, she became a Marine herself. Despite her gender, her status, her stature, her limitations, she thrived beyond her training, even carried weight 10 times her own body. She has the stomach of steel, or pinky pies, as she had fellowship with her fellow Marines, and she ate things like Hershey's chocolate, drank beer, and even ate a hat to prove a point. Now that's stomach of steel. Now one week in 1953, during the Korean War, she made 51 trips by herself in the battlefield on her own, over 35 miles of rice paddies with ammunition, supplies for wounded Marines, and etc. And after a long debate when the war was over, they finally managed to ship her back to Camp Pendleton. And in the 1990s, she was made the top 100 greatest heroes of America. That gal, she was thought of first at the world as a racer. An Chin-hai, thought to be the most pathetic racehorse ever to the Koreans. But to someone outside who believed in her, that's Staff Sergeant Reckless. Yes, that is a small Korean horse, and she was given the name Staff Sergeant, which is the only horse to be even given a title. And you see all those titlements? What they thought she would have the greatest of reward? Look at all those titlements. And that's about a pony size. So if you think it's stupid for a man or an older woman or someone with a disability that likes something about pastel-colored ponies, ask the veterans who are still alive today about the little pony who is basically their Marine. I believe that we all can go beyond the expectations, beyond the broken barriers of what society gives us, and we can go into Sergeant Reckless mode. Now, for you parents, I have a little something I want to tell you all, and I want to give you all the best advice from one of the greatest horse trainers I ever known, by the name of Parson James. He has 2 of them, actually. And yes, he does wear that all the time. That's just another thing that Silverquill would probably wear. Now, one of them is just hang in there. Now, when I mean just hang in there, I bet you're wanting to explode or wanting to throw in the towel and give up. But I want to give you the second quote. A horse never does something right or wrong. He is doing what is easiest. So not many people think that we people of autism, we're not trying to give up or anything. We're just trying to find what's the easiest. And it goes back to what I said on how many people, give me a couple examples of your favorite characters just trying to find the easiest, other than Rainbow Dash. All right, yes, you miss.
Well, I think one particular example is when the princess's dream magic sheep, Luna takes the easy route of blaming herself and internalizing her issues rather than dealing with them.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. All right, one more, then we gotta keep going.
Well, with me, actually, one of the main ones for me is actually, I can't remember the episode, but it's where Fluttershy wants to build the habitat for the critters.
Oh, that's in my own review of that. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, instead of going and pretty much
Yeah.
just telling her friends no, she's just like, why not let them help?
Yeah, Well, it's because it goes back to what I'm saying. You know, people of all different perspectives, we just want to find the easiest way. Well, sometimes the easiest can be lead on to disaster. Now, for the parents and of everyone in the spectrum, I have here with you the best advice I could give. Don't make your parents or guardians, people with the spectrum or anyone you know, pretty much antagonists. They are pretty much your cheerleaders. I know my parents, God bless them, God bless their souls, they did everything and I owe them so much. But parents, don't let your expectations be the weight they can't overcome with extra pressure. So despite the thought that they can do it, if it becomes too overbearing, just let them be. Just let them say, okay, I can't, that's too much, please. You're at an 8 on expectation. I need you to be at a 2, which I have a number system. Now second, this was something that my former boss often told me, don't use your disability as a crutch.
Yeah.
I learned this the hard way when I went to one ranch. I mentioned I was autistic. People took advantage of me. When I worked for the Fort Worth, my hat, they asked about it. I told them that I liked the show, and they're like, that's really cool, you pinned it in there. So something simple, it'll pretty much help. So you don't need a crutch. And don't allow yourself to become or use others as a tool of convenience. Because it overkills your serving spirit and it loses your individuality. Because parents, if you use your child all the time for pride or something like that, then your kids are gonna feel like now they gotta live up to that image. And KP's going on back right now, and it must have been very good. Now, the other thing, don't doubt yourself. How many of you would ever doubt that you would go through anything because of what you have or people that you know have it? Come on, or even people with nothing. Just tell me, how many of you all doubt? Don't ever doubt yourself because people don't expect you to do what they want to do. Now, the best time to do something is when you don't feel like doing it. That's my saying to every person I talk to, even my folks and those I train, that when you don't want to do something, it's the best time. That means you got to do it or you're going to regret it later. And another thing, if you remember when I said there's no such thing as normal? That's because each and every one of us, we're a limited edition. Otherwise, we would be boring and the same. And I wanted to say to each and every one of you that this fandom has seen so much, even in the ups and downs. It's given me an opportunity to reach out to you and that I want to be a beacon of hope for those who pretty much doubt themselves, because I've been there. And like you, this show helped inspire me to go through. And even though I know there wasn't much pony-related clips, it still is all connected in a small circle. Well, now that we got the heavy stuff done, I am open to a 30-minute Q&A session for each and every one of you. It can be anything of the autism perspective, it can be pony-related or undecided. Yes?
Okay, something you mentioned earlier about some drama. I was kind of curious about that because you mentioned drama something back in January, and I was confused about that.
What was that?
That was the Tomb Raider Y2K incident, which I vowed never to bring that up.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
shall not speak of that.
Yeah, you did ask, but yeah, don't. Any other questions?
I did not.
All right. Any questions? Yes?
I've been, about what you said, I've been through a lot the past several years, and honestly, I'm losing reasons to keep going on, and I keep overthinking everything, and
All right, stop. Listen to listen to me carefully. That's the problem. You overthink. Sometimes, it's like I said, if you, because I've been there as someone with autism, that when you overthink things, you can't get anything done. I think of the rule of perspective. That's why with Passion Planner, which it has a game changer, which I will leave it up here for y'all to look at if you're interested in it. But you've got to set 3 goals in your mind and always have 3 strong fundamentals: faith, family, and friends. That's what keeps me strong.
I lost that's part of the problem. I lost the third one. I was diagnosed with cancer, and I only recently successfully completed it. All the while I'm being told by my friends that I was going to get a cake party. In the end, because the leader of the guys, he kicked me out because his roommate was bullying me online,
If he
and
was,
he sided with the bully.
well, if he were bullying you, then he wasn't worth your time. It's just like, this is another advice that I've learned when I was in a bad spot in my career, that I've came across many toxic people in my life, and there are 2 things that you can do. You can kill them with kindness, or if they're not worth it, I would break ties and go into something more meaningful.
But as a result, I kind of, since I was told that I was going to get so much stuff, and none of it became real. I feel like all I'm doing now is existing.
I
Well-
understand how you feel. I feel that way a lot too. I'm just going along emotions. But if you have trouble with overthinking things, you just have to do one thing every day. You don't eat an elephant all at once. You eat one bite at a time.
Well, that's partly why I actually consider myself good at world building, because I overthink things.
if you're daunted by the big picture, if the big picture is kicking your butt like that, that's never going to happen. You do the little piece of it. You want to put one piece in the puzzle in every day, and eventually you'll step back and say, the puzzle's done.
Thank you, sir. You have read my script, haven't you, in my mind? All right, any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Actually, in relation to him, when something that I do in order to distract myself from day-to-day monotony and stress, I actually do focus more on my story ideas because it gives me a way to focus my pent-up stress.
Yeah.
And it goes towards something that I can use later.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it
I'm
comes-
trying that myself, but the thing is that this group was actually helping me develop my stories and stuff like that.
If my,
And now I'm not used to doing it by myself.
Well, I've pretty much always done it by myself, so I guess I can't relate there.
all right, any other questions, please?
Not a question.
Yes, in the back?
I have a comment for this young man right here. Whoever thinks things. Drink a cup of tea. And when you drink
I
the
will.
cup of tea, drink the tea. Don't think about the weather, don't think about your shoes, don't think about the itch behind your ear. Drink the tea.
Thank you.
And just
Very
that.
nice, thank you, sir. All right, if we could go back to the regular subject matter, yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that My Little Pony's changed my son's life. He's 25. He's been to all these Everfree Northwest since the first one. And this is, I know you look familiar, but this is the first time he's come to me and he said, I have feelings now. This show taught me to, sorry,
It's fine, and this,
taught me how to feel.
it's like Winston Churchill said, there's something about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of the man. And there are plenty of examples of even other autistic people on the spectrum. Like the best example I could give is the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime.
No.
Yes,
That's a good,
Oh, yes.
a good book.
yes. To think that Christopher is obsessed with math, that made him happy. Don't be afraid to have a passion that makes you happy, because to me, my passion is riding my 5, I was gonna say 6, but my 2-month-old Ellie Mae is not yet old enough for me to ride. But find a passion. Find something that makes you happy. Any other questions? Yes, young lady in the back.
So when I first started watching ponies, about 7 years ago, I started right between the season 2 and season 3, during that hiatus. I knew that I was autistic. I was diagnosed when I was in 7th grade. And I wanted to know that it's, I'm sorry, I'm not very articulate.
It's all right. It's all right.
You're in a room with people who probably are. You're with friends, they understand.
Right there with you.
So, from what I understand, you're having doubts with yourself since your diagnosis?
Not really. It's more of, people often think less of me when I tell them that when I have autism and more specifically Asperger's. And they only see me. They only see, they don't see me. They see my, they see my label.
Yeah, they only see you as a label.
Yeah.
Which it leads back to where, for me, I tell people only after I show my actions. Because I remember back when I was dating my former boyfriend at the time, after we were dating formally, after 4 weeks, I then told him what I was, and then he said, I always knew. I always knew, but yet your character proved it otherwise. So, like I said, you don't have to announce it in there, just show your act, be like me getting on a horse. You go up there, show your actions. And even though people would see in your spectrum, do your actions first before your words. And remember just don't doubt yourself because of it. Don't let your autism be the brand label. Embrace it and let your actions prove and go beyond the broken barrier that society puts on us in whatever circumstances we have.
If I
Now-
may,
Any other questions?
I actually had a little encouragement for her because I've gone through exactly that.
Oh, yeah.
Be yourself, be kind of course, but be yourself and don't let stigmas hold you back. If somebody wants to be mean to you, they're not worth your time.
Thank
By the
you.
way, I'm the camera operator.
If you go into something, she's right, you wait until after you've already proved yourself to tell them, or even if you ever do tell them you have autism, because by that time they're like, wait, you did all this and you have autism? That's even better. I didn't think someone like that could do that, but you've proven that you can.
All right, any other questions? Yes, young man in the blue shirt.
Yeah,
I mean, blue hat.
I
Tomato
remember
time.
growing up in the 80s and early 90s, you know, when autism was still kind of not broadly acknowledged to the extent that it is now. But, you know, I grew up without the sort of resources that we have now. Because I have Asperger's syndrome, so my mom helped me, you know, communicate a lot. She did a lot of work with me to become a very, very sociable person, and you know, and it's very important for an autistic person to become social. You know, it's a bad idea. You want to become an isolationist, but she did a lot of work with me, you know, along with some other people that helped pave my road too. You know?
Yeah, parents are pretty much, they are our cheerleaders, and they're the ones that are the backbone that help us keep going. And my best advice is, again, don't make them antagonists, even though they push so much, but they give so much to you in there. Because I can tell you the times that my parents wanted to throw in the towel, but yet they knew that it would pretty much mean I would fail.
Exactly.
And they would fail as well.
That's what my mom thought of as well. You know,
Yeah,
she,
well, I'm
she
really
pushed
glad.
me to be more than what I am, you know, instead of being a kid perseverating in the bedroom or whatever, you know, just go outside, become something, you know.
Exactly. So, any other, I have room for a couple more questions before I wanted to give you all a special closing surprise. Yes, sir, in the front.
How do I know when I'm pushing my daughter too hard?
You aren't. You can't.
She falls over.
Hey, that's my line.
I will say, from my experience, you could tell when your daughter feels overwhelmed and is only pushing just to do it. Otherwise, I would call that blind following. And what I mean by blind following, that extra pressure, you know she wants to do it to try to please you and try to be the best for you all, but seeing that there's too much pressure on there, just let go of the reins and say, hey, want to talk about it? Am I pushing too much?
Communication is key.
Yeah, communication is key. Because I will say, we autistic people, we may be hard-headed and want to get a lot of stuff done, but I will say that we want to prove everyone around this wrong, that we want to prove them wrong, but yet we kill ourselves in the process. Sometimes I even learned to back up and say, hey mom, you're pushing too much, go to a 2. And sometimes you just tell her saying, hey, if I'm pushing too much, it's okay. It's okay to push too much. Just like at the point when my mom even said at one point after nightmare nights, after I only was there one day and she freaked out, she said, even adults make mistakes. And that was referring to me going to a convention there, and she got freaked out on some of the Fluttershy costume place at the time. But in time, it gave me the motivation to pretty much show her saying, hey, I'm right here, I'm going to this right now. And whether I would not asking you your permission, only your blessing. But it's sometimes that pressure can be good to motivate. Because for me, my mother's expectation gave me the ability to just jump out and do whatever needs to be done. Because it was that quote that made me plan on the next 2 years. I'm here today because of that quote. And sometimes pressure, it can be the right click.
I guess there are times when I'm having trouble distinguishing when she just doesn't want to do something versus she really can't do it.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's a straight answer for you. You gotta kind of find a sweet spot, kind of like driving the manual.
Yeah.
Because it's different, as she was saying, we're limited edition, so, I
Yeah.
mean, what's maybe enough for one person may not be for another, so I hate to say it, but I don't really think there's a straight answer for you.
There's no answer because every case of autism is different.
Yeah.
All right, I think we got time for a couple more questions. I hate to bring it up, I don't want to get in trouble with Everfree, so yes, in the back purple shirt, sorry.
I've actually been trying to figure out something. I actually noticed in my hometown, really, most of the jobs pretty much, they expect me to actually perform at the normal level. So pretty much they actually, most of the time during the very beginning, actually push me past the point in which I can actually handle. There was a job that I was working as a dishwasher plus a prep cook, and they actually ended up firing me from that job because I couldn't actually handle the pressure of doing both. I could only do one at a time. And I noticed that's the same with a lot of the other jobs in my hometown, and I've actually been thinking about pretty much making my own business for pretty much.
If that's your drive to do it, to prove others wrong, and then just do it. And it goes back to my quote I keep on saying. The best time to do something is when you don't feel like doing it. And part of that may be just getting a day job. Now, I have a boss who expects a lot of stalls to be cleaned right, but there comes a time where I didn't go through them correctly, and she said, I expect this much because she does this and much work in order for it to pay me and other stuff. Maybe I don't know much about your town, but just know that they had expectations. If they're pushing you to the same drive, that means they're not treating you like a crutch. That means they know you can do it, that you can be a normal person. All right, we got time for one more. Yes, young lady in the far right.
I wanted to speak to you about something that I think is really inspiring, that you want to start something of your own. I'm from Phoenix, and
I have family in Phoenix.
Cool.
There's a bakery that was started by a man named Matt who has autism, and he started this business. It's called Smile by Matt. He makes biscotti and cookies and sells them around town, and like they get shipped all over the country because he wanted to do the same thing. He wanted to start a business, and he employs other people with autism, and his coworkers can be independent because he had an idea like yours. So
Yeah, and that's pretty much what my business was going to be.
follow your dream. You can do
Yes,
this.
follow your dream and go beyond the broken barriers of anything. Just, if you want to do something, just do it. Don't dream it, make a plan on it, and no matter what barriers, just go after it. Because I know it took me 2 years, but I'm finally here at Everfree and had the ability to speak to you all, and don't let it stop you all. Now, I know we're running low on time, and for some of you all, before I close, here's my Twitter site and my YouTube site. If you want to see my podcasts, my reviews, and anything horse related in particular, you all. I want to say that you all think you're not going to make a difference. I know some of you think you're not going to make a difference in someone's life. Well, I'm probably going to. I want to share you something. When I was working in Colorado, that was one of the toughest times in my life. Well, toward the end, a coworker of mine, who I will call Nate, wrote me this particular letter. This letter I rarely share with anyone, and I want to share with you all this letter today because by saying, you are the sweetest, kindest, most selfless girl I have ever met. You take interest in others, and you go out of your way to extend your love to everyone, to those all around. You really blessed me this summer of 15 with all of the encouraging words, your smiles, and your positive personality. I can think back to a number of specific instances when I was having a bad day, and you said something to completely change my mood for the better. You set a great example to me in humility, faithfulness, work ethic, and patience. I am lucky to have met you. The Proverbs say there is a friend who strikes closer than a brother. Proverbs 18:24, if you were wondering. You were that friend to me this summer of 2015. Thank you for finding me a saddle, for showing me your hospitality, for being a positive model, for sharing trust with me, for taking interest in my personal life, and for being the person that you can be no matter what others say through and through. I have no doubt you will succeed in whatever path you choose, and I am excited to see what your future has in store. And this summer, you made all the difference in my life. Yours, Nate. And that's my message, Nate's message, to each and every one of you who struggle with autism or those who have autism, how it's silly that a show can bring others together. See this as an opportunity. And I wanted to say that if I could go to the doctors again, I would say to them, thank you for being wrong about me. Because we all can go beyond the broken barriers. I am the Dark Horse at KC. Have a good, creative, and blessed day.
Thank you very much.